In the early hours before dawn, a dramatic sea rescue unfolded, capturing the attention and concern of both the Philippines and China. The world's eyes turned to the churning waters of the South China Sea, where a life-or-death struggle was playing out against a backdrop of international tension. As the sun struggled to rise, urgent distress calls echoed across the disputed waters. The radio waves carried desperate pleas for help, bouncing between ships and Coast Guard stations as a fierce storm battered the region. The South China Sea, already a flashpoint for territorial disputes, became the stage for a new crisis. The San Lorenzo, a Philippine-flagged fishing boat, found itself at the mercy of nature's fury. Towering waves and howling winds battered the vessel, tossing it like a toy in the relentless storm. The crew, seasoned sailors all, had never faced such a ferocious onslaught in these treacherous waters. Again and again, massive waves crashed over the bow, drenching the deck and threatening to swamp the ship. Each surge tested the limits of the vessel and the resolve of those aboard. Inside the cramped cabin, the radio crackled with panic. Voices overlapped in confusion and fear, as the crew struggled to relay their position and condition to anyone who might be listening. Every second felt like an eternity. The location of the crisis only heightened the tension, a patch of ocean fiercely claimed by both the Philippines and China. The political stakes were as high as the waves, with both nations watching closely, wary of any misstep that could escalate the situation. On deck, the Filipino sailors fought with every ounce of strength to keep their vessel afloat. They battled the elements, working together to secure lines, pump out water, and steer the San Lorenzo through the chaos. Exhaustion and fear threatened to overwhelm them, but their determination held firm. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the desperate scene in stark flashes. For a moment, the storm's fury was laid bare, waves towering, wind howling, and the tiny fishing boat dwarfed by the vast, angry sea. The crew's lives hung by a thread, each flash of lightning a reminder of the peril they faced. For hours, the fate of the San Lorenzo and her crew remained uncertain. Huddled together, the sailors clung to hope, praying for rescue as the storm raged on. Their families, far away on shore, waited anxiously for any word. News of the unfolding drama spread quickly. Around the world, people watched with bated breath as updates flashed across television screens and social media feeds. The South China Sea, already a global hotspot, was now the focus of a humanitarian crisis. Suddenly, hope appeared on the horizon. Radar screens in Coast Guard control rooms lit up, detecting a vessel racing toward the stricken fishing boat. The tension in the air was palpable as rescuers prepared for action. A Chinese Coast Guard ship, braving the same treacherous seas, was rushing to the scene. Its crew readied themselves for a dangerous rescue, knowing that every moment counted. The arrival of the Chinese vessel added a new layer of complexity to the already tense situation. The drama was far from over. As the rescue ship maneuvered through the storm, both hope and uncertainty filled the air. Would the crew of the San Lorenzo be saved in time? Would the rescue spark new tensions or bring a rare moment of cooperation? Every second became critical as the rescue mission unfolded. In these disputed waters, where politics and nature collide, the fate of a handful of sailors became a symbol of something much larger, a test of humanity, courage, and the fragile peace between nations. The day began calmly, with the gentle glow of sunrise painting the horizon in soft golds and pinks. The San Lorenzo glided smoothly across the tranquil waters, and the crew moved about their morning routines, exchanging quiet greetings and sharing laughter over steaming mugs of coffee. For a moment, it seemed like just another ordinary day at sea, filled with the promise of safe passage and the comfort of routine. But as the hours passed, the sky began to change. Dark, menacing clouds gathered on the horizon, swallowing the sun and casting long shadows over the ship. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of rain and the electric tension of an approaching storm. Suddenly, the wind picked up, howling across the water with a force that rattled the ship's metal frame. Loose ropes snapped against the deck, and the once calm sea churned with growing waves, tossing the vessel from side to side. Rain began to fall in sheets, slashing at the deck and drenching the sailors within seconds. Visibility dropped as the world outside the ship blurred into a wall of water and wind. Captain Ernesto de la Cruz, a seasoned sailor with decades of experience, shouted orders above the roar of the storm. His voice, usually calm and commanding, was nearly drowned out by the chaos. The crew scrambled to secure loose equipment and close hatches, but the storm was stronger than any voice or command. The San Lorenzo rocked violently, its hull groaning as massive waves crashed against its sides. Every lurch threatened to throw the sailors off their feet, and the ship tilted dangerously with each swell. Suddenly, a shout rang out from below deck. Water was pouring into the engine room. Crew members rushed to battle the rising flood, desperately trying to stem the flow with whatever they could find. On deck, sailors gripped the rails with white-knuckled hands as waves crashed over the bow. One by one they slipped and clung to the rails, fighting to keep their footing as the ship pitched and rolled. Then, with a sickening sputter, the engine coughed and died. The heart of the ship fell silent, leaving only the relentless sound of the storm. Powerless, the San Lorenzo began to drift, carried by the wind and waves toward a jagged line of treacherous reefs. The crew watched in horror as the rocks loomed closer, knowing that a single mistake could mean disaster. Visibility shrank to almost nothing as thick fog rolled in, swallowing the ship in a ghostly shroud. The radio antenna, battered by the storm, snapped with a sharp crack, cutting off their last link to the outside world. Fear spread among the crew like wildfire. Faces once filled with confidence now showed only worry and dread. The men huddled together, seeking comfort in each other's presence as the storm raged on. For hours the sailors battled exhaustion and terror, their bodies pushed to the limit by the relentless wind and rain. Every muscle ached, every breath was a struggle, but they refused to give in. With buckets and makeshift pumps they tried to bail out the water that threatened to sink their ship. Each bucketful was a small victory, a desperate act of hope against the overwhelming force of the sea. In the brief moments between waves, many sailors found themselves thinking of home, of families waiting anxiously for their return, of promises made and dreams yet to be fulfilled. The thought of loved ones gave them strength to keep fighting. As night fell and the ship was plunged into darkness, only the dim glow of emergency lights remained. Hope faded with every passing moment, but still, the crew clung to the belief that dawn would bring rescue, or at least another chance to survive. With the engine dead and the radio weak, the crew sent a desperate mayday. They launched flares, red sparks streaking the sky, a plea for help no one could ignore. The storm roared on. Would anyone see their signal before it was too late? The crew huddled together, shivering in their soaked clothes. Seawater sloshed around their ankles. They prayed for rescue. The captain scrawled a message on a piece of plastic, coordinates, a final hope. He tied it to a buoy and cast it into the waves. Suddenly a faint light appeared on the horizon. Was it another ship, or just a trick of the eyes? As hope flickered, the sailors waited, clinging to each other and to life itself. On board the Chinese Coast Guard's Haixun 09, the night was thick with tension. The radar screen glowed in the darkness, its sweeping arms suddenly illuminating a new blip. A distress flare had been detected, slicing through the stormy night. The crew, already on high alert due to the worsening weather, immediately recognized the gravity of the situation. Every eye on the bridge turned to the radar, the hum of electronics mixing with the distant roar of the sea. Commander Li Wei, a veteran of countless rescue missions, barked orders with practiced urgency. His voice cut through the chaos, steady and commanding, as he directed his officers to their stations. The bridge became a flurry of activity. Each crew member moving with purpose, their training kicking in as adrenaline surged. The crew sprang into action, racing across the slick, rain-soaked deck. The wind howled and rain lashed their faces, but they pressed on, bracing themselves against the relentless elements. Every step was a battle against the storm, but their determination never wavered. They knew that lives depended on their speed and precision. Powerful searchlights pierced the inky darkness, sweeping methodically over the wild, churning sea. The beams illuminated towering waves and jagged rocks, revealing the treacherous conditions that awaited them. The ocean was unforgiving, but the Coast Guard was relentless in their search. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life, breaking through the static with urgent voices. The operator adjusted the dials, straining to make out the desperate calls for help. Communication was patchy, but every word was a lifeline. The Chinese crew shouted reassurances into the storm, their voices amplified by megaphones. Switching seamlessly between Mandarin and English, they called out to the distressed sailors, promising help was on the way. Their words carried across the waves, offering hope in the darkness. "Hold on! We are coming!" they shouted, their voices unwavering despite the chaos. The message was clear. No one would be left behind tonight. The Coast Guard, ship, closed in, maneuvering with expert skill through the maze of reefs and rocks. The captain's hands were steady on the controls, guiding the vessel with precision honed by years at sea. Every decision was critical, every movement calculated to avoid disaster. Rescue boats were swiftly lowered into the raging waters, crew members donning life vests and securing ropes. The deck was a hive of activity, each person focused on their role. Time was of the essence. Every second mattered as the storm threatened to overwhelm the stranded sailors. In these disputed waters, the mission was about more than just saving lives. It was a demonstration of humanity and compassion, a reminder that even in the midst of territorial tensions, the value of human life transcended borders. The Coast Guard's actions spoke louder than words, showing the world their commitment to duty and decency. With unwavering focus, the Coast Guard approached the stranded Filipinos, their ship inching closer despite the raging sea. Every eye was fixed on the survivors, every hand ready to help. They were determined to reach them before the ocean could claim another victim. In that moment, speed and precision were not just tactics, they were the difference between life and death. The rescue boats fought their way through the churning sea. Crew members reached the San Lorenzo, shouting for the sailors to jump. One by one, the Filipinos leaped from their battered deck. Chinese rescuers hauled them aboard, wrapped them in blankets, and checked for injuries. A sailor slipped and nearly vanished beneath the waves, but a Coast Guard diver dove in without hesitation, pulling the man to safety. The operation was tense, every movement watched by anxious eyes back on the mothership. Lightning flashed, illuminating the acts of bravery. Within minutes, though it felt like hours, all the crew were safe. The San Lorenzo was left bobbing in the storm, empty but for gratitude and relief in the air. As the rescued Filipinos boarded the Coast Guard ship, cheers broke out. Some dropped to their knees, just overwhelmed by emotion, tears mixed with rain on their faces. They hugged each other, thanking the Chinese crew with shaking voices. Medical teams checked for injuries and offered hot drinks. The captain of the San Lorenzo could barely speak. Thank you, he repeated. The Chinese officers nodded, offering smiles and warm towels. The language barrier melted away in the relief of survival. On deck, sailors called their families with borrowed phones. Mothers and wives wept with joy. The ordeal was over, but the memory would last forever. News of the rescue spread quickly. The Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs released a statement. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to the Chinese Coast Guard for their swift and heroic actions. The safety of our citizens is our utmost priority, and we are grateful for this act of friendship. President Maria Leonor Santos addressed the nation. Today our prayers were answered by the brave men and women of the Chinese Coast Guard. We thank them for their compassion and courage. Social media filled with messages of thanks, many using the hashtag Jai Salamat China. The Chinese embassy in Manila welcomed the appreciation. This is what neighbors do, they replied, echoing the hope for future cooperation between both nations. For years, tensions haunted the South China Sea. Disputes over territory often led to angry words and close encounters at sea. But today, something changed. The rescue showed that even rivals can act with goodwill in moments of crisis. Experts say this could be a turning point. Trust is fragile, but real acts of kindness matter. Both governments praised the rescue as a sign that diplomacy is possible, even in troubled waters. The world watched, and many hoped this spirit of cooperation would last. Maritime analysts noted that joint rescue drills might become more common. There is talk of new agreements to ensure safety and peace in the region. The waters of the South China Sea remain unpredictable, yet today's events remind us that humanity can triumph over conflict. Filipino and Chinese sailors shared a moment of understanding that no treaty could guarantee. Officials from both countries have pledged to explore more ways to work together. There are plans for joint safety patrols and hotlines for emergencies. The hope is that these steps will save lives and build trust for years to come. In the end, gratitude and respect may be the strongest anchors. This rescue is a story of courage, compassion, and new beginnings on the high seas.